I'm Vadim Makeev. I work for HTML Academy, and I'm here to talk about accessibility in general. But I called my topic Inhuman UI for a reason, because it looks cool. It's a cover of one of the Marvel comics, and I want you to think not just about accessibility and these kind of things, because it's just a name of technology, or it might be boring. And I would like you to think about how accessible it to actual humans, to actual users that we're all working for. So, speaking about HTML Academy, I work for this small company in St. Petersburg, and we teach students some HTML, CSS, JavaScript, starting from very basics to advanced. And in this August, we've relaunched our basic HTML and CSS course to enable two things. First thing that we did, we've switched from floats and inline blocks to flex blocks. Just about time, because thanks. And it's because it's already widely supported. The second thing we did, we started to teach them accessibility. Now I read 2-hour-long lecture for our students that just learning very, very basics of HTML and CSS. I teach them for 2 hours how to make their interfaces accessible. And we have 2 criteria that your product should match, and I'll show it to you in a second. So the first criteria is all interactive elements have an active state while pressed or focused from keyboard. Meaning that if you're moving through your page or interface or whatever you're developing using keyboard, and some interactive elements are focused, it should be clearly visible. And D27, all interactive elements have text labels. Would your current project fit those criteria? Raise your hand. Yeah, not many. But those are very important, and this is not that complicated, even for users, even for our students that are learning very basics of HTML and CSS. And you're professionals, you have to make sure that your interface is matching those criteria too. And after this talk, I guess you will know how to do this. So, do you know what DX stands for? DX? It's the next version of iPhone, or no? Yeah, developer experience, exactly. So, user experience. It's a typical thing, like we know about it. But actually, we care much more about DX. Basically, DX, this is all we care about. Like, look at today's lineup and tomorrow's. 80% of talks are focused on developer experience. We care about how easy for us to write code, how to make it smoother, and how to use all those syntactic sugar and JavaScript loaders and everything. All we care about is our own experience. We forgot who we're working for. We're working for people, we're working for users to deliver them the best user experience. So if your user experience is bad, you have no right to speak about developer experience. So please shift your focus on users, because that's who we work for. So what means Inhuman in the title of my talk? Inhuman means, well, the first version of this talk, it was titled Cannibal UI. And in Russian version, it's called Cannibal. But there's no such idea in English, I guess, as cannibal, because it's like cannibalism, not just inhuman. So I called it Inhuman. It means not accessible. Not accessible to all users in the same manner, on the same level. And when we talk about accessibility, it usually means like the average developer talking about accessibility. It means blind people in wheelchair and everything, but it's not true. Accessibility is much more wider idea. If you have broken mouse if you have small screen of your phone, if you're on a slow network, it means that some interfaces, some data, some information on the web is not accessible to you. Simple. If you have small text or blocked viewport because some developer decided that it would be great to make interface appy, that it wouldn't scale, so it would be cooler and everything. So it's not accessible because there's no way to make it bigger. There's no way to click the proper link instead of the one that's bigger and everything. Scripts instead of links. I see a lot of sites that's not allowing me to open links in a separate tabs. When I click with Command or Shift on a link, they open link, not in the next tab, but in a current tab, because they have on-click whatever they have there. And this is also making interface not accessible. See, I'm not talking about disabilities still. Fields that block pasting or autofill, like you're trying to copy-paste your credit card number, and it doesn't work because they're too smart. Well, we're developers. We know how to open developer tools and paste whatever we want, but still, not everyone's developer. It's still not accessible interface. Bright sun, low contrast colors, and everything. I remember one application for iOS for fitness tracking. And I know specifically that they developed one little company in Moscow. They developed this application in the winter, inside their office. And the interface was black with white controls and white text. But then summer came up, and they realized that it's completely blind on the sun. Fitness tracking application. It's not accessible, not usable in the sun. So they rewrote it in a different scheme, black text on a white background. So their app wasn't accessible to people in the sun. Still accessibility. Wrong size or orientation of the screen, many different things makes interfaces inaccessible. And you all have to think about it. And at the end of this list, stays physical difficulties, like blind people with different specific conditions and everything. So accessibility is a much wider term. So please make sure that your interface is accessible in many, many ways. And as developers, we really like control. Like, we like pixel-perfect interfaces. We like to browsers that listen us exactly, and they're doing what we want from. And we don't like different browsers. We want just a single browser that makes everything as we want, as we demand from them. But there's no control on the web. Every browser does something specific. Like there are many extensions installed. There are many different browsers and different search engines, screen readers and everything. There's no control on the web. Please remember this, and please convey this message to your managers, people who you develop sites for and everything. Please do not try to control everything on the web. It's just a different kind of a platform. And while we're trying to control everything, we're trying to recreate everything. And we're trying to make everything as simple as possible, and we would happily publish just a single picture and map it with links. It would be the perfect interface. But we're doing something more than that, and I'm trying to explain here why we're doing this. So semantics for a typical developer looks like this. And I'm not trying to tell you that you have to know every tag on the left side, but you have to know much more than just a div. And please learn language, the main language of the web, HTML. And why is it so important? Let's see. This is a actual code of actual site, small studio, and this is their portfolio. What we can see here is just number of div with classes and everything, and it's okay. If you need 50,000 divs to create your interface, it's okay. But there's nothing there but divs. For this how your code looks for search engine. This how your code looks for screen readers, and different all kind of machines or people that access your site. It's like a Hoku, restaurant, site launched, front-end, back-end, whatever that. It means nothing, or it means something beautiful, but it's not Hoku. Just a small number of tags that you would add here would make difference, would make it meaningful. Like, it's a restaurant, and they probably launched site for this restaurant, and what they did for this restaurant, they developed front-end and back-end. Just a handful of tags add a lot of meaning to this, to everyone, not just people looking at your beautiful design coded in HTML and CSS. Please make sure that it doesn't matter how many divs you have. You should have semantic tags that would add meaning to your content. And people always ask me, why lists? Who cares about lists? Why wouldn't you put just a bunch of links inside of div? And there's an answer for that, because it's this number of this navigation wrapped in the nav tag and the list of links would sound in a screen reader like this: navigation landmark, list 1 of 3, link home, link project, link contacts, because it announces to the user that this is a navigation, not just a random place of a site. It's a navigation. It announced that there is a link of 3, not just a. There's a difference between navigation with 3 links and a tag cloud with 50 links, you know. And when everything you can hear is just a line by line readout from screen reader, it's important for you to understand if it's a list of 3 or 50. So when it's inside of a list, it will be announced, the number of items in this list, and you have an idea what's going on here. So list of 3. This is a really, really good feature of screen readers. So when you have a chance, please wrap your at least navigation inside of those lists. It costs you nothing, but it might help users to understand your interface better. In this case, it will be just a link home when you're focused on the first link. Link home, whatever that means. It's not an interface. It's just a random link. And the same applies to special elements that called landmarks. In Russian, we translate it as ориентиры, landmarks. And there are many special elements that might help screen reader users and search engines and every other browser to understand your interface better. Header, nav, main, etc. So please learn the language you're trying to speak to users, to many other browsers and machines. And the headings are especially important because there's a way in screen readers to navigate special parts of your site. So by default, screen readers read code of your page line by line. First line, second, third, fourth, and etc. But there are special modes. They could navigate links in a special mode. Users, screen readers, they could also navigate your headings. So they could read all important parts of your interface first to have an idea what's going on this page. And once they have an idea, they could navigate to the certain part of this interface and interact with it. If there's no headings, it means nothing. It means that your interface had to be read to line by line, and this is just a disaster. So in this case, they will have an outline of your interface: company name, services, design, development, and they could choose where to go. This is so important that if it's the only thing you will remember from today, please remember it. Use proper headings to mark your interfaces.
And there's a special part in HTML, in interfaces in general. There's a special group of elements called interactive elements. And it's important for you to understand how they work and how to use them. So this is a typical interactive element in a browser. This is just a text field. We focus here, and whatever I type here, it appears here, and yeah, it's easy. Just a typical text field. But once we here, it's focused. And you see this blue outline, it means that it's focused. And when I press whatever keyboard shortcut I press, every event goes inside of this input. It means that it's focused. There are many other elements that could get focused by default, and you can actually apply those focus state to any element you want. But the two most important interactive elements are links and buttons. You can do the same things with links and buttons. You can focus them from keyboard. So all events goes to this element. They're not populated across the whole page. The same for buttons. You can focus and everything. So those interactive. It means that you can interact with them. And there's one really tough thing for modern developers is to choose between link and a button. And there is you might have seen my talk regarding buttons and links, but this is a thing that's worth repeating. There is a really, really simple thing, checklist or like process of choosing between links and buttons. The first, it's always button. Like always. The first thing you do, if there's an interactive element that should be clicked or interacted somehow with, and it's just a button, always. If it could be clicked, it's a button. If it's not, it's a link. That easy. So if you need something more from this interaction than just a click, than just a JavaScript firing, if you need to change the location, if you need to go to a separate page, if you need to go to the different anchor on this page, it's a link. That's it. Take a picture. I don't know. Try to remember. This is so complicated. Again, it's always button. It's very important. And there are many other interactive elements in HTML, and you're probably not familiar with all of them, actually. For example, this one. This one is simple. It's just an input and a label, and there's no complicated thing in it. But there's also this one. And this is a radio button list. What could be difficult with a radio button list? And we actually currently you see not a single control. Not four controls. You see actually single control, because all of them are linked with a name attribute. You can actually choose just only one of them. And if the first item is focused, when you press tab, you go to somewhere else, because you will go outside of this group. So to choose between radio buttons, you have to use arrows on your keyboard. So if you're trying to recreate something like this in your interface, please make sure that it will interact with arrows on a keyboard, because this is a typical way of interacting with such elements. And like this, it's also interactive built-in HTML element. It's range. It's already here in browser, so you can easily use it instead of recreating it every time. But if you have to recreate it, if you need two handles on this thing, it's not currently supported in browsers. If you need two handles, please recreate it that way that allows usage from keyboard. So you can focus the handle and move it to the left or right or up or down with keyboard, because it should be keyboard accessible. It should be focusable. This is so important for when you're working from keyboard, when you're a screen reader user. And this interface, this is typical. It's just a simple thing that toggle your
hide or show simple things on your page. It just details. And it's also built into browser. Please don't recreate this with JavaScript because it's already there, and it could be easily polyfilled. And this kind of thing, I'm not sure if you ever seen this, but there's no JavaScript involved here. It's just a list of elements connected to the input with special attribute. It's called data list, and you can have suggestions. You can have a drop-down list and everything. Please use it. It could be also easily polyfilled. So semantics, it's not about arguing about if it's article or section. Who cares? It's about making interfaces accessible, more user-friendly, using built-in features of a language. And another very important concept of the interaction with interfaces is focus. Let's play a game. Where am I here in this interface? Where am I? Guess. Search? Maybe. Wish list? Logo? Actually, I will help you a bit. I'll zoom in. Where am I? Come on, it's easy. I'm everywhere. Because when you're disable single line in CSS of the site, you can clearly see where are you. And this makes this interface much easier to interact with, much easier to use and navigate. And it's just a single line. AliExpress developers added just a single line and killed all keyboard accessibility. Raise your hands if you have this in your code. Don't be shy. And keep your hands up, the ones that will remove it tomorrow or even today. Please do. This makes everything so much worse. This makes everything so much not accessible that I couldn't even tell. Not only for keyboard users, not only for screen reader users, but for professional users of interfaces. Have you seen how they navigate interfaces in banks? Like 25, you press tab 25 times and a couple of numbers, and then they press space and then tab and everything. They don't use mouse because mouses are slow. Mouses are harder to operate with. So keyboard interfaces are professional interfaces, not just for users with problems, how we might say. So please remove this line. And how they interact with, how they move between interactive elements on the page. Easy, with tap. And a tab moves you forward in the interface between interactive elements. Shift tap moves you backward. This keyboard shortcuts work in every browser on every platform. Well, where keyboard is accessible or those keys are available. So please don't disable outline so users will be able to use your interfaces. And try to navigate your interfaces with tab and shift tab keyboard shortcuts, and you'll understand that in most cases it's not accessible. And how to get into tab index apart from being interactive element? You can actually add a special attribute to get into tab index and make any element interactive. So tab index attribute controls interaction state, and tab index 0 just adds element to the order of focus on a page. So it could be div tab index 0, and it will be focused and interactive, and it will get this stupid blue outline that could be not just removed, but replaced with something better. So not just remove it, but replace it with something good. Tab
top index -1 will add your interactive or any element to the list of interactive elements, but it will stay out of order. So it will not appear while you're pressing tab. It will be ready to be interactive when you do like .focus in JavaScript. So it's prepared to be interactive. And top index more than 0 is just problematic. It's like Z index 99. There's always a person with 999. So it's useless. And top index 0 makes your element appear in the order of the source code, meaning that all zeros are equal, meaning that DOM order is important thing. When you use top index more than 0, you make everything much more complicated. So please don't ever use top index more than 0. And there is a special element that, using which I will try to show you that there is a difference between good built-in interactive elements and the ones that you're trying to recreate using divs and JavaScript and CSS. So imagine you have 4 buttons. 2 of them are buttons, 2 of them are just divs with a class button. And visually, they are the same. So I made sure that they look the same. So you can click, and you'll see that they're responding somehow. But in button case, in real button element case, they also have this weird blue outline. Actually, it's not that ugly as built-in, because I replaced it with box shadow, and it looks much better. But why the buttons have this thing and divs don't? Because I actually replaced it, and divs also respond to the active state. So if something is clicked, like any element, table, div, whatever, if it's clicked or pressed or pushed, whatever, it becomes active. So remember this. It could be useful in some cases. But to make divs interactive, we're going to add it to we're going to mark them as interactive with a top index attribute. So in this case, excuse me, so they are interactive. So now I'm stopping to click on the page, and now I'm starting to use keyboard to navigate. And you see, wow, I can navigate between buttons and div the same way. Wow, they work the same. Why would you use button? I heard there's a bug in Firefox that not allowing to use, that makes it really hard to use flexbox inside of button element. Such a big problem. But still, let's use divs instead, because we can make them interactive. We can style them easily. We don't have to disable built-in browser styles and everything. Yeah, let's do this. Not really. I'm going to show you something. Let's add a bit of JavaScript here. So, a very complicated piece of code. I'm looking for all class button elements, and adding a simple event listener click to everyone, to every button found. And I will, once it's clicked, I will change disabled attribute to true. And let's see how it works in the browser. So I'm clicking on the first. Let's not use mouse this time. I'm focusing the first one, and all of them are like totally fine working with a keyboard. But I'm pressing spacebar here. Spacebar is pressed, and now our actual real button is disabled. Let's go to the second one. Oh. Oh, what it is. Let's try again. Button works fine. Nope. It just switching to the next slide. But even when I click, nothing happens with the actual mouse. Nothing happens. What's going on here, apart from this duck? There is a built-in
pseudo class in CSS, disabled, that works only on buttons. Or you can also disable some other interactive elements, but still. In this case, it works on button. There's no disabled attribute on div. And if you want simple API to disable your button, which is sometimes it's very useful, you have to recreate in JavaScript. And apart from that, remember I added click event to this button. But I pressed the space bar. I haven't clicked it. It turns out that buttons are converting clicks. They recreate this click event every time I press spacebar or enter. So they fire the same click event, both for mouse, touch, and a spacebar or enter. So there's a great API with buttons, and in case they're disabled, they do not fire click events. So you don't have to remove event listeners. You don't have to disable them or remove them from tab order. You have to just add a single disabled attribute, and they are disabled. It's impossible. Well, it's possible, but it's very complicated thing to recreate with JavaScript. So please always use buttons. It's so important that and so much simpler. So I could just beg you. There's another important concept in accessibility called labels, and you know labels from typical forms. So input, label, they could be linked, they could be connected somehow, but label is a concept much wider than just input-label relationships. Labels are content of every tag you have. So content of a link is a label for this link because it could be it's clear what's going on inside of this element if there is a text label inside of it. A caption of the group, you can attach it to the input, of course, but you can also make some hidden labels if you need to. You can add it via area attributes and stuff like this. So labels are the way to explain element. So if there's no label, it means for screen readers, it means that element is useless. There's no way to understand what to do with this element. So make sure your elements are clear enough, because when you use Unicode, and in cases like this thing sounds like black right pointing triangle. So make sure you have all your Unicode things hidden. Also, X sounds like X or multiply. It means nothing to screen readers. It's just confusing. So please hide such things with area hidden true if you add it. And of course, empty element sounds like clap of a single hand. It sounds like nothing. So make sure your elements have some content in it, some text content or attribute. So labels are crucial for interfaces to be accessible. And in case when you have just a list of inputs or checkboxes, once checkbox is focused, screen reader will read, sorry for Cyrillic, it will read like black selected radio button, first of two. But you can do it better. You can add legend element inside of field set. And screen readers are smart enough to combine legend with labels. And they will read like this. Fridge color black. Selected radio button 1 of 2. You see, there's no fridge word inside of label. Screen readers combine legend with label content when they read it. So it's much better, much clearer for screen reader users what's going on here. So make sure your field sets, so sets of fields, have legend element that combines contents, and it's much better, much clearer, much better interface here. For each color black when first radio button is selected, and for each color white when the second is selected. So that's how screen readers read your interfaces. Please help them. You can also label things with special things. Well, it's a typical thing in today's interfaces when you have just a SVG icon inside your button, and that's it. There's no text. You can easily label your SVG icons with special area label attributes, and it will be read by screen reader. The same applies to those burger menus. You can also make them much more accessible by hiding them or rewriting content of the button with area label. So in the first case, screen reader will read only content of the area label attribute, not the contents of the button. You can also hide it with extra element. It's whatever makes you happy. But please make sure that you're not exposing weird Unicode symbols that are just look right, but they does not sound right with special attributes. And what if there's no heading in your design? What if there's no heading and the designer thought that heading is a useless thing because it's just obvious what's going on here. You look at this interface and it's obvious. But sometimes there's no way to look at interface. Sometimes sometimes you're a Google, you know? Sometimes you're a blind person. You have to understand what's going on here without looking at interface. So please add headings and hide them if you don't have it. And it's totally SEO friendly. And there's a link to the discussion in some Google forum, an official reply that it's okay to hide elements, not your spam doorway thing, but actual headings that will help screen readers, search engines, and everyone else to understand your interface. And what is visually hidden? It's just a simple helper class that you have to have in your interface to make it more accessible. It's so much easier to hide additional notes to screen reader users with this attribute, with this class name. So it's essential thing in interfaces. Please add this helper class to your code today. Why not? And there are some tools that will help you to make your interfaces accessible. First of all, screen readers, VoiceOver, NVDA, JAWS. VoiceOver is macOS and iOS tools, screen readers, and NVDA and JAWS are available on Windows. NVDA is free. JAWS is costs. It's just too expensive, so I guess you will choose NVDA. And please make sure that at least try it once. When you're not screen reader users, when you have no reason to use screen reader, it could be confusing for the first time. But try it at least once to understand how they work. And there are other tools. This one is built into Chrome since Chrome 61 or something like this, and you can audit your page and test if it's accessible or not. You can run your audit, and you can get 100% of accessibility testing. And it's cool, and this lighthouse thing will help you to make. We will suggest some places where you can do better job on accessibility. But sometimes it's not that smart, because with 100% accessibility score, you can still use this thing. You can use useless alts with your pictures, putting just picture name in it. Those are useless, and there's no way. Well, there is a way to detect it, but there's no way to tell it for sure if it's accessible or not. So make sure that you run this thing, that you test your current project with this audit tool in Chrome DevTools. And if you have continuous integration, you can use the X CLI thing that is actually this Lighthouse is based on it for accessibility testing. So you can easily integrate X CLI to your continuous integration. It will help you to spot some problems with your interfaces.
And but my favorite part, my favorite tool in Chrome DevTools for accessibility testing is Accessibility Inspector. It is currently disabled, but you can well, I could say you can easily enable it, but it's not easy. 5 steps, but still, please do it. And you will have an additional tab when you have all your styles and DOM attributes and everything. On the right side, you will have additional tab called Accessibility Inspector, and you can actually explore accessibility tree. It's like DOM tree, but full of accessible information that is exposed to screen readers and other kind of agents. So please enable Accessibility Inspector and make sure that your actual elements are conveying some information to users. And this is a typical accessibility inspector with applied to the Google Maps. And you can see that Google Maps doing really good job on accessibility. They have some area attributes. They explain how the interfaces work to screen reader users. So try to do something like this. And people always say to me, accessibility is a feature. And as every feature, there should be, you should spend a lot of time on it. You should prioritize it. And if you don't have time, you wouldn't add some feature to your interface. This is just not true. Stay with me. You see this thing in your interface. How much? I don't know why would you add this to your interface, but I've seen it once, but it doesn't make sense at all. Imagine you're creating links using I element with onClick. Total nonsense, but still. How much will it cost to replace it with proper link? It's a feature. You're replacing all stupid things with all proper things. It's a feature. How much will it cost to replace divs with buttons? Nothing. You just write it from the very beginning. You're just using the right elements. You're using right tools for the job. It's not a feature. It's a bug when interface is not accessible. And we teach our super beginners those features. And they're totally fine with it when they know it from the very beginning. You're all mature developers. And it's a bit harder for you to get all this information right now because you're doing this for years now. But it's just essential for modern interfaces to be accessible. If you'll remember only 4 things today, please use buttons and links in a proper way. Please control tabs and focus states. Please use headings, and make sure that you have text labels for all of your elements. Attributes, content, doesn't matter. Always a label. No empty elements whatsoever. You'll have some links to read, and thank you.